lift everything.
Behind every headline,
Дай Бог, чтобы они доехали.
there is a human story. This is Our World, a series of documentary films that reveal the human drama at the heart of global events.
Життя триває, у нас двоє дітей.
Our World. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
People are travelling again, heading back out on the road and rediscovering their wanderlust.
Exploring new destinations and cultures, making fresh friends and creating memories that will last a lifetime.
That's why at the travel show, we're expanding our horizons too. And wherever we go,
we want you to come with us. Now that might make for an awful lot of excess baggage, but we think you're worth it.
The Travel Show, tomorrow at 2:30 on BBC News and iPlayer.
Morning. Come and have a seat. Now, of course, I'm not going to go easy on you. There are some really big questions we've got to try and get answers to this morning. But I'll be fair, and we just want to hear what you've got to say. So, shall we get on with it?
We're rolling.
Here we go. Join me to hear from the biggest names inside and outside politics.
Sunday with Laura Koonsberg. Sundays at 9 on BBC One and iPlayer.
Hello, we're back and we've got plenty to talk about. Welcome to a new look Newswatch with me, Samira Ahmed. Coming up is the upgrade to the BBC News app, more of a downgrade. And with the news channel late to the game with some breaking news on Thursday. Over the summer, as you can see, we'll be making some changes to our studio backdrop and our opening titles, so do let us know your thoughts on those. And while we've been off the air, the news agenda hasn't gone quiet, as it sometimes does at this time of year. Here's a reminder of a few of the big stories of the past few weeks.
The fires in Rhodes have not diminished. Instead, more have broken out overnight, and there are concerns the winds could get stronger, fanning the flames even more.
July isn't over yet, but it is already virtually certain to be the hottest month ever recorded on Earth, say a number of teams of climate scientists around the world.
And so the stage is set for what will be a momentous occasion. When England's Lionesses walk out here at the National Stadium in Sydney, they'll know that they're on the brink of sporting immortality. But claiming football's ultimate prize will not be easy. They're about to face the highest-ranked team they've met here at this tournament.
She thought she'd get away with it. But this was the moment the game was up.
Oh, Lucy, is it? Yeah. Oh, my name's Chester, please. Look, it's Stefan, 2 seconds.
Oh, yes?
Yeah, thank you.
Behind the door of this ordinary suburban house, Britain's most prolific baby killer was finally arrested 3 years after her murder spree began.
Those images we saw of fires on the Greek island of Rhodes and elsewhere, and the wider issue of climate change, were prominent on news bulletins at the end of July, dividing Newswatch viewers. Louise Fernie contacted us with this plea. Can you please stop exaggerating temperatures and showing pictures with commentary crying Armageddon? A lot of the fires are arson. It is affecting the mental health of children, all doom and gloom. But a few days later, Jane Riley sent us this. Just a simple thank you for putting the update on climate change as the headline news at 6 tonight. It's something that needs to be in the faces of each and every one of us. Later, as England's Lionesses progressed through the Women's Football World Cup, their success featured more and more in news headlines. That did not go down well with Mary Evans, who wrote to us following their defeat in the final. I've been increasingly cross about the coverage given to England's women's football team. Your BBC reporters seem to think that the whole of Britain has been supporting this team, forgetting that many of us are not from England. However, I've been mildly indulgent until tonight, when the main news gave a long time to England's loss, with only a few seconds given to Katarina Johnson-Thompson's gold medal for Britain in the World Athletics Championship. Is the BBC just representing England? Coverage of the conviction and sentencing of Lucy Letby, the nurse who murdered 7 babies on a neonatal ward, was by necessity harrowing and highly distressing, and reporting restrictions made it a highly complex case to cover. But a number of viewers made an objection voiced here by Kathleen Playford. The coverage has pictures of this murderer smiling, wearing a party dress, drinking cocktails, etc., at a time when the parents of the victims are addressing the court with their personal statements. Why are they showing this horrible person enjoying herself and her life? Do they not think this is just glorifying her and disregarding the feelings of the victims' families? Judith Argent, though, had this to say about the BBC's North of England correspondent, responsible for much of the reporting of the case. Congratulations to Judith Moritz for her excellent, heartfelt coverage of this horrific case. Now we're up to date. Let's turn to an issue that's cropped up this week concerning some breaking news reported during Nikki Campbell's phone-in show on the News Channel, presented by Rachel Burden on Thursday morning.
Emma, stay with us and we'll hear from Tony in just a moment. But we're going to break away from this discussion because we've got some news just coming through to us about the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace. We can speak to Henry Zeffman, our chief political correspondent. Henry, good morning. What is the news then?
Well, Ben Wallace has now formally resigned as Defence Secretary. He announced last month that he would be going at the next reshuffle. That is happening now. We don't have confirmation yet on who the new Defence Secretary is going to be. But Grant Shapps, who's currently the Energy Secretary, has just gone into 10 Downing Street.
One of the main purposes of a news channel is to bring breaking news to audiences immediately. But among the changes made earlier this year to the BBC's 24-hour television news offering was the introduction of that Nikki Campbell show to the domestic stream of the channel between 9 and 11 a.m. every weekday morning. Following on from breakfast on the channel, some viewers were concerned that that meant 5 hours without a dedicated newsroom service and that might affect the speed with which news stories could be reported. So that's the background to this phone message we received on Thursday morning.
At 8:23 this morning, GB News broke the fact that the Defence Secretary had resigned. At 8:24, Sky News broke the same story. I watched with interest as to when the BBC would break the story. It's now 11 minutes past 9 and you've just broken it. Why on earth would anyone turn to the BBC for the latest news? You put breaking news all over your screen for the most meaningless of reasons, and yet when something breaking news, like breaking news happens, you're just way behind.
So why did BBC Television report Ben Wallace's resignation 45 minutes after 2 other news channels? BBC News gave us this reason. Ben Wallace announced his intention to stand down as Defence Secretary in July. The breaking news story was not his resignation, but rather that the reshuffle to replace him would be on Thursday, a story BBC News started reporting on Wednesday night and from 6 a.m. on Thursday. Details of his replacement were revealed on BBC News around 9 a.m, more than 30 minutes before it was announced by the Cabinet Office. Now, we on Newswatch are not the only ones who have had something of a refresh over the summer. With more and more people accessing news via their mobile phones, the BBC has also made changes to its news app. But the new design has attracted a large number of complaints. In fact, it's the topic that, according to the BBC's logs, has attracted the most comments from the BBC News audience over the summer. One of those who got in touch with us was John Gott, and he joins us now. John, thank you so much for coming on Newswatch. Tell me how you've been using the news app and what bothers you about the new version.
Well, I was familiar with it, and I suppose with new changes there's always going to be a problem. But I don't like the way that the new app delivers the news. For me, it doesn't work. And as a result, it's no longer my first news source. The former format was just so much easier to view and navigate quickly. And the presentation has, in my opinion, become bland, certainly by comparison with the other news apps. I think the new very white presentation wastes space, and the menu options are very limited, again, by comparison with other news apps. I miss the fact that there's those menus. I know there is a 3-point menu on the bottom, but it doesn't seem to be as comprehensive as it was before. In other news apps that I use, The Guardian, the FT, they have multiple choices generally at the top of the page that you can flick around if you want to go to some other aspect. And the BBC News app now, whether or not it had it before, it certainly hasn't got that now. It's just got the three options at the bottom, which means I'm not able to navigate around in any way in the way that I would choose. In terms of content, there's a local section now, which I wasn't aware of before. I'm not really interested in it, but I don't appear to have any way of removing it.
It does feel like you're very frustrated with an app that you used to really enjoy. I guess we might think that people often complain about changes to apps that they're used to, and then eventually they get used to it. Do you think there's a chance that you might just get used to this?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm fairly new to the Times, which also has a very white interface, but I got used to that very quickly because it made sense and because the menu options were there. The new BBC app doesn't have those features, unfortunately.
So it sounds like you're actually turning to other apps and away from the BBC app. So The Guardian, the FT, the Times, those are the ones you're looking at?
Yeah. I looked at them before, but the BBC one would be generally the one that I go to first to get their point of view before I went on to the others.
How would you sum up what it is about the BBC app that's off-putting now compared to these other ones that you're turning to more frequently?
It's the appearance and it's the lack of ability to move to where I would want to do. And it's the way that the items are being presented again. I think also in terms of the photographs, I would rather have, other people may disagree, but I would rather have lots of small photographs with so that I can see lots of news items at any one time rather than having them spread down loads and loads of scrolling.
Yeah, so more small thumbnails that you could click on, more information on the screen at a time, less white space, and the better font.
Yeah.
John Gott, thank you so much for coming on Newswatch.
You're welcome.
Well, in the next couple of weeks, we hope to talk to someone from the BBC about those changes to the app and the corporation's wider digital strategy. In the meantime, we've been given this statement. The update refreshes the technology that powers the app, which will allow us to introduce new features, bringing you the news in a way that works for everyone. Over 95% of people with the older app have now upgraded to the new one, and last week more people came to the new app, spent more time using it, and came more frequently than they did with the old version. We appreciate that getting used to changes to an app takes time and appreciate feedback so that we can fix any unforeseen problems as quickly as possible. We are also actively researching to identify key improvements to the app, for example with My News and how articles are presented. Thank you for all your comments this week. If you want to share your opinions about what you see or hear on BBC News, on TV, radio, online and social media, including that app, email newswatch@bbc.co.uk. Or you can find us on Twitter @NewsWatchBBC. You can call us on 0370 010 6676 and do have a look at interviews on our website, bbc.co.uk/newswatch. That is all from us. We'll be back to hear your thoughts about BBC News coverage again next week. Goodbye.
This is BBC News. We'll have the headlines for you at the top of the hour, which is straight after this programme.